There have been some debates this week on the shows I'm part of. Two smart guys, Nick Wright and Jason Whitlock, on separate occasions have come on this show or Speak for Yourself and argued that Usain Bolt is the most dominant athlete, that Michael Phelps is not the most dominant athlete, and certainly just medal count. You can't just count medal count. But I'm going to let you hear their arguments first. So this is Nick Wright saying Michael Phelps is great, Usain Bolt is greater.
Michael Phelps races in 8 different events in the Olympics, and he's been awesome. I'm not discounting Michael Phelps. I'm not hating on the great American swimmer. But let's just say, what if in the 100-yard dash or the 100-meter dash where Usain Bolt is dominant, he got to run it, and then they were like, hey, you can win another gold running it backwards. Then you can run a gold skipping it. How many golds would Usain Bolt have? Because that's what Phelps gets to do.
I would say that's minimizing Phelps, but an interesting take. Here's Jason Whitlock on why he prefers Usain Bolt to Michael Phelps medals.
70% of African Americans don't swim. Half of America doesn't swim. Swimming is a nice little niche sport, nice little niche endeavor, mostly set aside for the elite. When you grow up like I did, if you wanted to get to a pool, you had to carpool with someone's family to go take you to some public park to go swim. You know what we did in my neighborhood? We got sprayed.
All right, interesting point. I'll tell you why I chose Michael Phelps. Because Michael Phelps chose the perfect profession. Dave Chappelle was born to be a comedian. And the first step to super success, often stardom, is self-identity. I would say 90% of people listening to me today, you chose the wrong profession. You got married, had a kid, you had a mortgage, you took a sales job. You're pretty good at it. You make $100, $200. You're good at it. Don't get me wrong. You're good at it. But you weren't born to do it. You're not born to do it. Jay Leno always talked about that. Jay Leno said, I lived in a car. I wanted comedy to come first. I didn't want to get locked into a local job. I didn't want any bills. I'd live in my car. The first step to super success is self-identity. Dave Chappelle, his mannerisms, his intonation, his voice, Dave Chappelle is born to be a comedian. He's just funny. I would argue Dennis Miller and Bill Maher are comedians and successful, but what they really are is smart, and they use comedy as a gateway to success. I don't think Bill Maher and Dennis Miller are naturally hilarious. I think through hard work and high IQs, and that's not to say Dave Chappelle isn't smart, but Dave Chappelle is naturally body language on. He's funny. He's just funny. I say this all the time. Unless you're a listener, salespeople think it's all about talking. It's actually about listening, because the client will always tell you body language or verbal cues what they want. The great salespeople aren't the best talkers. The great salespeople are the best listeners. Most people in sales, 90% are average, 10% are great, and it's not the talkers. Michael Phelps chose the perfect thing to do in life. He's tall. He could have played basketball. He's tall. He could have pitched in baseball. But his DNA, he's a human fish. He's 6'4". Olympians say the perfect height for swimming. His arm span is extraordinarily long. Generally, a person's arm span is equal to their height. Not with Phelps. Significantly longer, allowing more pulling power with his arms. His torso is that of a 6'8" person, freakishly long, enables him to have an amazing reach. His lower body's only 5'10". It lowers the resistance against water. He has huge palms, along with size 14 feet that act as flippers. And he has double-jointed ankles. They act like fins. When human bodies perform any physical activity, they produce lactic acid. Michael Phelps is the envy of other swimmers because it's been scientifically proven that his body produces only half the lactic acid that his rivals need to handle. He could have done a million sports. His hands, his reach, his torso, his size. He picked the perfect sport. I used to cover UNLV basketball at a college in the late 80s. And there was a guy named John Welch. He's now a coach in the NBA and assistant. I've never, ever met a human that loved something as much as he loved basketball. John was 5'11" and marginally athletic. He didn't play much. Had he been a lawyer, a baseball player, probably a better fit. His passion got him to be an NBA assistant coach. I've never met anybody that loved basketball in my life more than John Welch. He'll probably hear about this. He lived with a basketball, and he worked incredibly hard. And he used to have a very clever behind-the-back move to the basket, right hand behind the back. He crossed over his dribble, and it would beat somebody one time to the hoop. But ultimately, he was 5'11 and a half, maybe 6 feet tall, and marginally athletic. There were limitations on what he chose. Is that if you want to become an all-time great, one thing has to happen. Your DNA fits perfectly with your passion. And in the history of the Olympics, nobody's DNA has more perfectly fit their passion. Michael Phelps is a human fish.